My name is Scott Colella. I am the manager here at WorldNet, and we've got a team of people. You guys have, all of you, I think most of you have seen our Facebook. We try to do cultural exchange. We help teach English. Our main objective is to help people in the Serbian community, to reach out and help in areas that we can help in. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speakers to give them as much time as we can.
My name is Jessica Brown. I'm from Texas. Proud to be from Texas. I'm a civil engineer, and in that case, what that means, usually civil engineers, we build roads, build water and wastewater facilities, bridges, airports, pretty diverse buildings, so pretty diverse amount of things. My particular area is water, wastewater. I went to college and got a degree in civil engineering, and I worked for a company that when I first started 19 years ago, we had 250 people, and we have 700 people now, so a lot of great growth during that time. And the group that I'm in, actually we weren't even a group when I started. I took a chance, which you'll hear me talk about chances here a little bit, and there were two of us who did the type of work that I was doing, and it was actually, some of it started off as computer modeling of water and wastewater systems, and not a lot of other companies were doing that. So you'll hear me talk a little bit about finding a specialty area that you're interested in that kind of distinguishes you from other people a little bit. When I started, we had 2 people, and I believe now we have about 31 people 19 years later. So it's been a lot of fun to go through and develop that. And so a lot of the principles I'm going to talk to you about are actually based on that experience. When I got out of school, I didn't think that that's what I would be doing. I didn't know exactly what I was going to be doing, and maybe some of you, as you were going through school, didn't know exactly what you were going to do either. But it's been great, and I will say one thing when it comes to work, if you find something that you're passionate about, it makes work less work. It really makes it a lot more fun, and that's what makes it fun for me to go every day. So some of the things that we found, so I said we started off with 2 people, and one of the things that we did was we had the ability to be able to take on smaller projects. We weren't picky on the projects we took on. We took on some difficult clients. One thing we found is if we could make difficult clients happy, we could probably make anybody happy. There's some people that we worked with that some people said I would never work with them, and yet we went through and exceeded their expectations, and so it worked out really well for us. So we started off with smaller projects, which eventually led to bigger projects. We took chances on things. There were some things that we maybe didn't necessarily know how to do all of it. But we have, smart people. All of you are obviously very smart also. And so we just went through and figured it out. It was a lot of hard work. With some of those taking chances, it's hard. I find I have 2 kids. And one thing I feel like that I hear from them a lot, my daughter was going to try volleyball camp. And she said, well, but I'm not any good at volleyball. And I said, well, nobody in 4th grade, when you're 8 years old, is good at volleyball. You have to work at it, right? And so that's what we did with work, is we went through and worked at it. Something that I found helpful, your particular area, it's helpful to find professional organizations or other people who do a similar type of work and network. That's one way that we went through and met people. We met people that sometimes we ended up hiring, which was very helpful. You got to know the type of work that they did. We met people that became our future clients. We started to establish relationships with them. So, and I guess getting on that, with meeting future clients. There was one person that we had met at a conference, and somebody introduced her to us, again, working your network with that. And we kept visiting with this person. We kept calling on her off and on. We knew she didn't have any projects at that time. We knew she didn't have any work available at that time, but we kept calling on her to try and develop that relationship. Finally, 2.5 years later, she came out with a project, and we actually were selected on the project. And part of that was because we had spent so much time trying to build that relationship, even though we knew she didn't have anything to offer. So that was definitely a big lesson for us, is to be able to spend a lot of time. Because there were other companies who would only go and go call on them whenever they had a project. So if you only go and call on somebody, whether it's a potential client or whatever, if you only go and call on them whenever they have a project, they know that that's all you're looking out for, instead of trying to build that relationship over time. Because as we worked over time, we found out what were some of her hot buttons, what were some of the things that made her concerned, what were some of the things that kept her up at night. She worked for a city. They had a water and a wastewater system. They had a lot of various issues. They had older infrastructure. They had a challenging city government at that time to work with. And so with that, whenever it came time for her project to come up, we knew to be able to hit on every one of those single things that she was concerned about. Okay, just making sure. I mentioned taking chances, and I do find that with my kids are 11 and 13, that they seem to be a little more risk averse, is what I call it, so afraid to take chances on things. And I think whenever you're looking at starting out in the business world, you have to be able to take chances. Like I said, I took a chance on not knowing exactly what I was going to be doing whenever I started my job. I'm actually taking a chance in my current job. I've been doing the same type of work for 19 years, and because of building up that group from 2 to 30 people, they're asking me to take on another new initiative that, again, is kind of out of my comfort zone. I don't know how to do all of it, but I do know how to be able to build up a team that's not exactly made up of people just like me. I'm going to go through and recruit people who have talent in all these different areas, because if we had people who were just like me, we probably wouldn't get very far, because we'd all have the same skill set, right? So I have somebody, I'm an engineer, I have somebody who is very specialized in software development, somebody else who's specialized in mapping, and so going through and bringing that team together is very important for helping to develop that business. One thing that we also found that was very important was when we were going through and executing projects is to under-promise and over-deliver. It sounds a little bit cliche, but we did find that if you go through and figure out, okay, I think it's going to take me 2 weeks to do something, say it's going to take 3 weeks. Give yourself a little bit of extra time, because sometimes there are things that come up. In our case, sometimes we've had equipment break down, or we've not received all the information that we need. And so it ends up looking bad to the client if we're late, right, in the end with that. And so we build in kind of a little bit of a buffer time. So then if you get it done within the 2-week time period and you told them 3 weeks, then even better. They see that you've gone through and delivered that. Another big thing on successful business practices is communication. And that gets like a lot of different things. But let's say in that case of not being able to deliver something in the time period that you're going to. If you wait until that day that thing is due, whatever the project is or that your deliverable, to tell them, that's probably going to make your client a little upset, because he was expecting that all the time. Whereas before, when we've tried to let people know a lot further in advance, like a week in advance, say, hey, it looks like because of X that we're going to be late, 90% of the time, they're okay with that. There's occasionally they get a little bit mad, but 90% of the time they're going to be okay with that because you've communicated that ahead of time until waiting till the last minute. And then the worst possible thing you can do is wait until after that deadline has passed, and then they're calling you, because more than likely they have a chance of not using you again. And on that note, we also, one thing that we found, my boss jokes, and he calls it making deposits into a bank of goodwill. So let's say you've gone through and delivered ahead of schedule multiple times, so you've gone in and made a lot of deposits with that client. That makes you in a lot better position to be able to make what we call withdrawals. So some of those little hiccups that you have, in business, that makes you be able to weather some of those. There's some clients that you're not going to be able to get through that with, but there's a lot that you'll be able to do that. I think, another thing that we found is helpful is finding a way to have bigger exposure. I kind of talked about if there's organizations that are involved, either professional or other type of organizations that are that you can go to either to network, to present at. The longer you do your work, usually you can be able to present like we're doing here, essentially really is, we're presenting on what we do. And so if you can find venues for that usually opens doors within there.
I guess I picked a couple interesting things out of there. The cliche, I would tell you from my experience, is very true. Under promise, over deliver. It's easy sometimes to get in a mode where we want to say that we're doing really, really well and that we're going to get there when we know we might be in a tight pinch and we're afraid of the reaction that we get. But as Jessica had pointed out, it's much better to get that up front sooner than later, because they'll be far more disappointed if on the day something's due. And many of you have probably dealt with this. One of the other things I noticed, your story about working with a potential client, getting work in as a small company. Would your client base be mainly probably city governments, things like that? Yeah. So, to maintain and build clients takes more than just, as you said, getting them one-on-one when you know they have a job. So as people start businesses, it pays, and I used to have to do the same thing in my work, where we were always trying to, work with that potential next customer, whether I knew he had a job out there or not. I was in a little bit different environment, but same kind of thing applies. But questions? Anybody want to ask Jessica a specific question?
Are there any particular challenges that you faced, like really hard challenges that you would like to share with us?
Yeah. Well, we got told no a lot at the beginning, and it was really easy in that case to be discouraged. I think some of the other things were a lot of the people that we were competing with had a lot more resources than we did, right? And so, but a lot of those larger companies would only focus on really large clients. And so that's why we went through and said, okay, well, let's start small, because if you start small, you can start to build up your client base. And, there's now people I've been working with for the whole 19 years that have been here because of that, because we've, even though we started working for bigger and bigger clients, we still do work for the smaller clients. And so, in order to be successful, I think you have to not leave behind what's made you successful, in the beginning, that client base, and neglect that just because there's kind of bigger fish, to chase as part of that, if that makes sense. Hiring was sometimes a challenge for us too. My area is a kind of a very specialty area, and at the universities in the U.S., they don't really exactly teach what I do. There's some that will have a couple of classes that may introduce someone or potential college graduate to what I do, but I have to do, not only do I have to sell to my clients, I also have to sell to new graduates. And so what I and some of my other coworkers and I do is we'll go to college career fairs and be able to explain what we do, because we're trying to recruit our next people, and that's how we've gone through and developed our team of 30. Some of the other things that we did also from a hiring perspective is we brought on college students as interns. It's relatively inexpensive labor from our standpoint, but it's good because it gives them a chance to almost like interview us for that time. Summer internships are very popular in the U.S. It's a way to earn money. It's a way for companies to kind of try people out. But it's a good way for us to, it's like a 3-month interview basically from their standpoint. We get to see how they work. And so, if you are able to, from a business perspective, bring on people maybe on an intern basis or kind of a part-time basis to try them out before fully committing, to hiring somebody, that's really helpful. And on the flip side, if you're a student right now, are there anybody who's students right now? Yeah, okay. So I would definitely encourage, trying to find work in your field. Sometimes it may or may not be paid work. But for potential employers, it looks really good on your resume to see that you have gone out, and done that. So it takes sometimes some work to be able to find those. But I know whenever I was graduating from college, we had a career center that kind of helped us try and find jobs. But there was a lot of stuff. I did a lot of searching online, and I looked up companies. I looked up what they did, where they were located, how big they were. To try and find out, is this maybe a potential company that I want to work for? What kind of projects, did they have? What were their potential clients? And so I probably sent off 50 resumes just in that way to try and find a job later on. But I had done some summer internships, and that really helped me narrow down exactly what I wanted to do. There were some things in school that helped me know what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to do bridges, so I knew that. Engineers do bridges, but I definitely didn't want to do that. But yeah, building that team up overall has been challenging. just because what I do requires a little bit different skill set. A lot of people think of engineers as very nerdy, and not being able to communicate. I'll be honest, that really is a stereotype, and there really are some of those. There's a lot of those, and well, probably not some. But with my area, because we work with the public a lot, we work with cities, we present a lot at public meetings, and so you have to have the ability to be able to communicate, think on your feet, those type of things. And a lot of that just takes time and practice. But we're looking for certain skill sets, usually in people, to be able to do that. So that was a really long answer to your question.
No, that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to ask another thing.
Yeah.
And before I ask that, for both of these questions, I would also like to hear the rest of you answer the same. So the first was that something very difficult, challenging in your career.
Yeah.
And the second, I would like to hear something about your hiring process. How do you filter out and decide on?
Yeah. But in my case, what I'm looking for from hiring is sometimes we get referrals from other people, so that's where your kind of networking comes into play. Sometimes we get people who apply on our website, and sometimes we go through to some of the colleges and meet students there. Things that I'm usually looking for, do they have decent grades? I don't need somebody who has a perfect grade, because maybe that means they only study. So I'm looking for something a little more than that. I'm usually looking for a little bit of involvement in activities, especially leadership activities really show well on some of those. If you helped lead up a certain organization, if you helped lead up a certain day of volunteering or whatever, but something that shows that you're kind of taking initiative there. And then, if possible, I try and look for, do they have some work experience in other places? And so that helps with that. But usually there's a screening process on our side. I'll say it's a pretty long process, because sometimes I'll get 40 resumes, and I only have 2 positions, so I have to look through. So I go through an initial weeding out process. So those are some of the things I'm looking for, and then from there we go through a hiring process. Sometimes we'll do a phone interview. Those are hard. Those are hard from the person who's interviewing as the interviewee, and those are hard from our perspective too, because it's a little bit awkward. Because here I can, play off of your body language and be able to see, okay, are you engaging with me? Are you confused? Is there something missing in that? And anyway, so sometimes a phone interview happens, and then after that, an in-person interview. And usually when we bring somebody in to interview, they interview not only maybe with me, but several people on our team at different levels. So it depends on who's coming in to interview. Is it an intern? That we're going to have them visit with another student who's doing the same type, similar type of work. If they're somebody who's just graduating from college looking for a full-time position, we'll have them visit with managers and and some of the younger people, so that way they get an idea of what do you do in the day in life of a younger person. If it's a high-level position, then we would have them, maybe even interview with the president of our company, which we just recently did. Actually, we had somebody from a very high level that was interviewing, and so we wanted to show him that we were committed to bringing him on board, and so we had him visit with the president of our company. So that's kind of, does that answer a little bit more on the hiring process?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now that when I finally got to the answer on that, yes. Hiring is hard, I'll be honest. If you're hiring younger people, all you know about them is what their college background is and whatever you can learn in that 30 minutes or an hour that you're talking about. So you have to be very careful what questions that you answer or ask with that, because I want to get an idea of what kind of person is this that I'm interviewing. I have to figure out, are they a hard worker? Are they a quick thinker? Are they going to be a good team player? And that's hard to get in that 30-minute or 1 hour time period. Sometimes right away when you're interviewing somebody, and sometimes it takes a little while to be able to sort through that. So.
But was your question more oriented toward interviewing and seeking a job so you know what the practice is, or is it with respect to hiring people in specifically? Either way. Yeah, I was just going to add, I'm a retired engineer, program manager. I hired a lot of people over my 35 years in the field. And one of the things that you said that struck me, that is what I always looked for, was I was looking for a well-rounded person. You know, having a 4.0 average is one thing, but can you do practical things, and are you willing to learn new things, is far more important. And usually the way I would look is I would look what their grades were. I don't want somebody who's, you know, a 2.0 necessarily, but I would look for people who had other activities in their resume, or that I would ask them about. You know, you asked a good question. What is your biggest challenge? In my interviewing practices, I want to understand, okay, during school, what was your biggest challenge? Why? What did you do about it? How did you deal with it? And learn those kinds of things about that student. Because in my case, they were students, they were university students. But the key being, you learn the whole person. And the whole person is what you're hiring. You may have a great, you know, academic resume, but if they're unwilling to learn, because generally your university training only partially prepares you to go into the workforce. You learn most of what you learn on the job as you start doing it. As you said, you get into things you don't even know what you're getting into, and you got to learn these new things. So I want somebody who comes up that curve very quickly. And usually you can see activities they've done that will give you an indication of how well they do that. I wanted to see which way you were posing that question, and I understand both ways in actuality.